NBC.
NBC and CNBC TV18 present The Way Things Move, dynamic trends in the auto component industry.
While the global auto component industry is estimated at $1.2 trillion US, there seems to be a gradual shift in the manufacturing of auto components towards Asian countries. With growth drivers such as low-cost raw material, easily available manpower and quality assurance, India is certainly becoming the new destination for global outsourcing and manufacturing. As per industry estimates, out of the total turnover of the Indian auto components industry, around 60% is derived from sales to domestic OEMs, around 25% comes from sales to the domestic replacement market, and around 15% is derived from exports.
Welcome to a very special industry panel discussion, The Way Things Move, dynamic trends in the auto components industry. Auto components is a $1.2 trillion market worldwide, and just for context, $1.2 trillion is approximately the GDP of the whole nation of India. The three or four key drivers in this industry are, of course, increased vehicle demand both domestically and globally, low-cost manufacturing, both facilities and manpower available in India, the availability of skilled manpower, and of course government policy initiatives. To discuss these issues, I have an eminent panel with me, Mr. Rakesh Batra, National Leader Automotive Practice Ernst Young, Mr. Abhijit Gupta, Director Purchasing New Holland Fiat India, Mr. Sudam Maitra, Chief Operating Officer Supply Chain Maruti Suzuki India, and Mr. Sanjeev Taparia, Senior Vice President Marketing NBC, a CK Birla Group company. Mr. Batra, let me start with you first. You know, friction is like love. Too much of it can smother you, and too little of it means life doesn't work. And auto components ensure that the auto industry moves smoothly and with just the right amount of friction. My question for you is this. The Indian auto components and ancillary industry was built on these two platforms. One was the available of manpower, and the other was, of course, the low-cost manufacturing advantage. Is India in danger of losing both those advantages as wages rise?
Not really. I think, it's really driven, this is an industry that's driven by scale. And it's largely driven by its supply chain. And when you think about the amount of steel and other components that need to be shipped around, I think there's always a competitive advantage in having a strong local supply chain.
You're saying that the domestic demand is going to fuel the auto ancillary industry, not so much exports?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. Exports are also growing, and as India gains more and more scale, I think we'll find the exports also expanding. Today, we export about 500,000 cars. Domestically, we consume about 2.5 million cars. So it's roughly about 20%.
Mr. Sudam Maitra, I'm going to ask you this not as somebody who's worked in Maruti for a long time, but more as an industry expert. India has 400 large firms and 10,000 small firms in the unorganized sector in auto ancillaries. This industry is growing at 15% CAGR. Is this a healthy structure, 400 organized, 10,000 unorganized or semi-organized?
Well, I would say that, the more and more these unorganized people are growing, we should try and bring them, within us. In fact, today what is happening is that we are also looking for tier 2 suppliers. You see, once upon a time we started with tier 1 suppliers in the industry. But as we are progressing, more and more these tier 1 suppliers are becoming aggregators. They're giving us more and more assemblies. And the production is shifting over to the tier 2 base. And in fact, all these people who are there in the unorganized sectors, I think they should be brought up and trained to really become a good tier 2 supplier.
Mr. Sanjeev Taparia, here's a quick question for you. I'm from the city of Bangalore, and most CEOs in the city of Bangalore joke that the software industry in Bangalore and allied areas developed not because of government policy, but precisely there was no government policy. Do you think the same is true of the auto ancillary industry? The fact that the government is not pushing forward or holding you back is what's causing you to grow?
In my opinion, the government has played a significant role, and therefore you have seen the transformation. We are perhaps in the topmost countries producing automobiles.
Not just in volume, in quality as well. Indian components are among the best in the world.
We are second largest in two-wheeler. We are highest in small cars. So we have a fairly strong automotive industry. Yes, there are some roles which the government has to play more in terms of infrastructure, in terms of supporting the R&D and so on.
So your company is the second largest manufacturer of ball bearings in the country, and you invest heavily in R&D. Most Indian companies, however, do not invest enough in R&D. That's been the accusation, which is the reason why we don't have breakthrough innovations from India. What drives you to invest in R&D?
So in the last 2 years, when we sat down and thought about our strategy going forward, clearly exports was becoming a very important area where we should focus on. And for becoming a player in a global arena, you definitely need to upgrade your engineering capability.
On a continuous basis, you need to keep doing that.
So that prompted us to go very heavy on the R&D spend, and over last 2-3 years we have spent heavily on R&D, and we will continue to do so in near future.
On that note, it's time for a quick break. We'll see you on the other side.
NBC and CNBC TV18 present The Way Things Move, dynamic trends in the auto component industry.
As per Automotive Component Manufacturers Association of India, the Indian auto component industry has been growing at a compound annual growth rate of 14.6% during 2007 to 2011 and is expected to be $113 billion by 2020. This growth story continues to grow, but certain factors like low quality import, spurious products, inadequate infrastructure and lack of skilled labor seem to be potential points of concern to the industry experts.
So if you were the Minister for Industry, what are the key changes that you would like to bring about to say, make India the #1 destination for auto component outsourcing?
Well, the main thing is people's confidence in India as economy, as political structure. Also, the attractiveness comes from long-term consistent approach, which is related to investments, infrastructure, government policies.
And we're struggling with short-term consistency with the current government. In how are we going to get long-term consistency?
We are a very tolerant country, as we all know.
Okay.
So I think optimism takes us a long way, and that is something which remains, whether it's a downturn or it's an upturn. So my thinking would be that the basics naturally have to be there, whether it is investments or whether it is infrastructure, whether it is technology, whether it is R&D, whether it is skill sets required. But on top of it, it is the consistent optimism which is important.
Mr. Taparia, how badly is our spurious products and cheap imports affecting your business? Bearings especially.
Yes, spurious bearings are menace, so to say. They have a very strong presence in the aftermarket, and the kind of laws or the laws which are in India, it's not so easy to curtail these spurious makes. But yes, from the manufacturer side, what we are trying to do is to educate the people more and more, and also we are using some new packing methods and some electronic solutions to overcome this problem.
The China question seems to keep coming up over and over again. In your view, how do we stack up against China? What is our relative strength towards
well, I mean, whatever experiences we have had with China, in fact, we feel that in China, you have basically 3 levels of quality. One level of quality is which the Chinese small players are making.
Absolutely.
And that level of quality is not really good. I mean, though the goods might be very cheap, but then the quality is not good at all. Then the second level of people are there who have now become bigger in China, and they are basically working in a very large volumes. Now those people come up, but their price levels are more or less matching with the price levels of India.
Yes, it costs that much to manufacture something.
Exactly. And the third one are the MNCs, who are also manufacturing there.
Who have their own capital plants.
Yeah, absolutely. And our experience had been that when you take from these MNCs from China, they come out to be costlier. Their landed price to India come out to be costlier than what we are producing here.
Because they have their overheads for compliance and other such things, which is bound to add up to the costs. Right, let's move on to the next topic on this discussion. Mr. Batra, once again, 60% of this country is under 30 years old. In theory, the most highly employable workforce in the world. We are a country brimming with potential of young people waiting to work. Yet every CEO across every sector, every industry says, I do 200 interviews to hire 2 people.
I think we have to think about the automotive sector across the value chain. This issue is there not only for a vehicle manufacturer, for a supplier, it's also there at the dealers, right?
Absolutely.
We have dealers who are also growing and need much more trained people. and skilled people. So it's a problem across, and I don't know that there's a simple solution to it. I think there is a start. Beyond that, all the stakeholders really need to come together and work, because what's happening right now is whatever skilled labor is there, I think is just moving from one part of the value chain to the other, or moving across within the, within a certain element of the value chain. And, that's causing a very high level of attrition. So it affects the overall training, the development, a lot of those factors as well.
Mr. Taparia, how big is innovation going to be as a driver in this industry? I know that you have a flexible manufacturing system where you can develop all sorts of products for different sizes, different vehicles, and for shorter life cycles of the vehicle's existence itself. How big a role does that play in your business and in the sector in general?
So there are two basic things. One is the speed at which the models are being introduced in the country. The second is, of course, the volatility itself in the demand. Sometimes the production is going up, sometimes the production is going down, and the component supplier has to match those kind of volatility to come out as a winner.
Okay.
So there, when we sat down and thought about it, how to best to address these issues, so we decided a system called flexible manufacturing system, where we are able to respond very fast to the market.
You can rapidly ramp up or ramp down.
Absolutely. So it's not only our internal adjustments, but you have to involve the whole supply chain, because even the raw material supplier, the component supplier, tier 2 vendors, they have to be geared up. And also our setting times, for example, the tool setting times and all those things have to be very, very efficient. And with the result that we are able to, address those volatility.
Let me go to Mr. Batra on the same question. Do we see enough innovation in the Indian auto ancillary sector?
I'm looking across the value chain. When you say auto component sector, you have to look at, R&D and product development. You have to look at manufacturing, process manufacturing, or manufacturing processes. You have to look at testing and validation. You have to look at innovation and supply chain management, and in manufacturing as well. So across the whole gamut of activities. I think in, probably in manufacturing, we have a lot of innovation by, India's ability to do low capex manufacturing. It really comes down to how much capex you need to put in. And there, I think we have a good level of innovation compared to, other nations and other manufacturing industries don't even think that way. How can we reduce the cost of our, capital equipment, and how can we produce more with less? So that's an area where there is innovation. But if you talk about in R&D, are we, filing a lot of patents, or
that may not be the case.
In process, it may not be the case. So overall, as an industry, I'd say it's in one major pocket, which is manufacturing. But in the others, I think there is a lot of opportunity.
On that note, it's time for another quick break. You're watching a special discussion on the way things move, dynamic trends in the auto components industry on CNBC TV18. Keep watching.
NBC and CNBC TV18 present The Way Things Move, dynamic trends in the auto component industry.
The Indian auto components industry is all geared up to take on to the challenges ahead. Spearheading in the manufacturing sector with innovation, it continues to share the growth opportunities as well as the hurdles faced by the auto sector in the country. We find out what these challenges are and what holds the potential to become the future drivers for the auto components industry in India.
Let's talk about commercial vehicles. Now, the growth of commercial vehicles is largely dependent on the rate at which infrastructure is built in the country. And we all know, plan after plan, we keep promising to add a few thousand million kilometers of highways every year. It simply doesn't happen. Where do you see this going, and how does that impact your growth plans for commercial vehicles?
As far as light commercial vehicle is concerned, we are clearly seeing that there is a good amount of growth happening in the country. And in fact, India has a potential to become the second largest manufacturer for light commercial vehicles. As far as heavy commercial vehicles, of course, it depends on the overall economic situation and the way the infrastructure shapes up. I believe every day 10 kilometers of road highways being added in the country, which could perhaps be much higher, but still 10 kilometers per day is adding. So definitely as we go along, the highway will become better and better. So I definitely see a growth coming in this segment.
Okay.
And especially on the LCV side, we have a potential to become a player in a global market.
That was the current state of the industry. Let's look into the future now. Once again, my question for Mr. Batra. Mr. Batra, paint for us, if you will, a picture of what the automobile industry will look in the year 2050. Will we all be driving electric cars and fuel cell cars? Will gasoline and diesel cars be a thing of the past in 30 years from now?
I think looking to 2050 or 30 years from now, we should see a lot of change as far as mobility is concerned. You know, as economies grow and as India grows, you know, as it certainly will, I expect that we should see a lot more, you know, public transport solutions coming in. We're also hearing about new urbanization projects like the Delhi-Mumbai Industrial Corridor. So I think there will be an effort to manage this whole, you know, urbanization and creating more clusters. And there's no reason why, if we're building new clusters for people to live and work in, that they cannot take into account, you know, more advanced mobility solutions to cater to those people. Now, as far as you know, vehicle technology itself goes, you know, electric vehicles are already there today. I don't know.
I've been hearing about this for 15 years now. Electric vehicles around the corner. When am I going to see? We have one manufacturer in India.
Yes, we have one manufacturer in India.
When am I going to see 20?
You know, I think all the manufacturers or all the multinationals and even some of the Indian companies do have access to the technology. I think the question is the technology cost effective enough today compared to the other technologies? So, you know, it's because of the cost of the battery, because of, you know, availability of infrastructure and, you know, so on, that the technology is not really providing a value proposition to the customer that they should adopt that technology. So it's only people that are very environmentally conscious and feel, you know, they need to go in for an electric vehicle. And then, you know, you need to have the roads and the other conditions, the environment, the infrastructure to support this technology. It's not just the technology itself. So I think the question is, it's not just up to the vehicle manufacturers. The vehicle manufacturers, the towns, the utility companies, other service providers that need to make it convenient for a consumer to, you know, buy a battery or to buy power anywhere. So, you know, some kind of payment solution. All of this really comes into the mix when you're thinking about a major shift in technology going from an ICE to a, you know, an electric vehicle or a fuel cell vehicle or whatever it may be.
Mr. Maitra, I'm about to end this discussion. Before that, one last question for you. Mr. Batra made an interesting point, that electric cars and hybrid cars are bought by people who are environmentally conscious. Now, that group of people is a subset of the overall group of people buying cars, let's say 10%. The other 90% are buying the petrol car or the diesel car because it's the cheapest form of personal mobility. In my view, environmental concerns are not going to drive this change. It's going to be financial and economic constraints. So from a financial and economic point of view, which technology would you bet on for the future?
Well, you know, right now what I feel is, I mean, the best way probably to do is to go for hybrids. You know, then what you do is that you also become, you know, environmentally better. And at the same time, because ultimately probably people are going to use more of electric cars, you know, I mean, in future. So therefore, you know, gradually you are moving towards that, but through the hybrid route. And in fact, there are people today, even in India, you know, a few days back, you know, I had a presentation from one of the Indian companies who came and gave a different concept of hybrid, by which you are able to bring down the cost of the hybrid vehicles really lower, you know, than what it is today. So therefore, people are thinking in different directions and thinking of the concept of hybrid. And in case if that is possible, then in that case probably hybrid vehicles also become much cheaper. So than what it is
you'd place a big bet on hybrid
so therefore
vehicles.
I feel
would be
through the hybrid go towards electric.
Okay. No more about the domestic industry. The impact of bilateral agreements like FTAs that India has with ASEAN countries, how big a driver is that going to be in the future?
I think particularly with the ASEAN region, it's going to be an important driver for India's automotive industry. You know, I think many OEMs are currently already evaluating, you know, using India as a manufacturing hub to serve the, you know, ASEAN region. Today, Thailand is some sort of a hub, particularly for some types of vehicles. But I think India is a much more developed industry across different vehicle segments, and given its proximity to ASEAN. So with the right policy environment again, and some of these markets can be pretty large, and as we hear, Indonesia, Vietnam, etc., a number of different markets there are evolving, that it could be a very important opportunity for India in the region, and to be a regional manufacturing and development hub.
That brings us to the end of this discussion, the way things move, dynamic trends in the auto components industry. Thank you for watching CNBC TV18.
NBC and CNBC TV18 present The Way Things Move, dynamic trends in the auto component industry.
NBC